Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live in the flesh.
Where did you pop up from? Secret tunnel or something?
It's my biannual visit. So
Yeah.
how's it going?
And you bumped me out my seat.
Listen, when the big dog comes in,
Aye, big dog.
Scott, we're joined by Scott McDermott, of course. Scott, how's it going?
Aye, good, mate. If I'd have known you two were making the effort, I'd have come into the office myself. Made it a hat trick.
I know.
Well, look, Scott, you're on and we're really grateful, but there's no point in telling lies.
I believe you. Well, Scott was obviously at Easter Road last night, which I think is definitely worth talking about. Big win for Rangers. But I think the best place to start, Keith, is Celtic's managerial hunt.
Yeah. Interesting. There was obviously Kieran McKenna was doing his press duties at Ipswich today. Match day -1, they call it. And it was being presented, I felt, down south as well that's him, he's ruled himself out. But if you actually listen to the substance of what he said, there was no definitive answer given. In fact, it was exactly the answer that you would give if you were still wanting to make sure that the iron was still in the fire. So I think that's been misrepresented a little bit, exactly what Kieran McKenna said. He said, as you would imagine, that he's fully focused on doing his job, that he sees himself staying at Ipswich, hopefully for the rest of his career, but he knows that won't happen. So basically, he said kind of, apart from, I don't know if they were expecting him to stand up and say, yes, guys, I want you to know I'm out of here, I'm gone, Celtic have come calling. When asked if there had been any approach, he said, I don't know, I'm just focusing on, and that wasn't a denial either. So I felt it was a very curious way to package it up. And I think he remains a person of significant interest for Celtic. The word coming from Ange Postecoglou's camp seems to be a little bit more definitive, and it kind of feeds into what I'd said a couple of days ago, Daniel. I know guys that are really close to him down under, and their view has been long held that Ange just isn't a guy that goes back and does it again. That would need to be he'd need to be bending his own or breaking, shattering his own rules to be interested. I think there's also a not insignificant matter of his gardening leave payments from Nottingham Forest. So that's as much as I think that's the perfect fit for Celtic right now. I think it looks unlikely, and it has looked unlikely from the start, which is probably why Martin O'Neill's been brought in just now with Sean Maloney. Hold the fort. Let's assess some options. And obviously, Martin O'Neill did talk about the kind of profile of a younger coach for the permanent job. Craig Bellamy, I see people down south again seem to be suggesting that he's unlikely to fancy this. I'm not entirely sure about that either. I think it's a really complicated situation because he's got 2 games. Well, I was going to say it is next month. It's still next month. But November 15th and 18th against Liechtenstein and North Macedonia. And if Wales win both of these games, they will claim second place in the qualification group and go through into the playoffs, which wouldn't be until March. And he would then be the playoffs away from getting to a World Cup.
Yeah,
that is going to be complicated. But I'm just getting a feeling from people that I've spoken to around it that think he's he probably feels he's a bit too young for international. What is he just now? 46, Craig Bellamy. I think he would really welcome the opportunity of getting back into daily coaching routine at club level, especially at a club the size of Celtic. So I wouldn't rule that out. As much as if there's any Welsh people watching this right now, I apologise. Please don't come at me. Because obviously he's a really passionate Welshman, and that's a given. But I think Celtic would cause him a problem. It could cause him a problem if the question was asked. So I'm not putting a line through either of those names just now. And there are others, aren't there, Scott? We were talking about the Bruges manager. He certainly isn't putting that much distance between himself and a possible invitation for talks.
No, he's not. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously, we dealt with him fairly recently when Bruges came to Celtic Park, and then even more recently, obviously, when they hammered Rangers in the Champions League qualifier. And certainly the way he kind of conducted himself both of those times when we can interviewed him pre-match and post-match, and also how the team played in those games. I mean, both of those ties, I remember being at Celtic Park that night. Celtic managed to take it off them, but I mean, he stole a point off Bruges.
Bruges were really good that night.
Yeah.
They were terrific. And then obviously we know what happened against Russell Martin's Rangers this season. So Nicky Hayne at Celtic want to go down the foreign coach route, then he would certainly appeal to me. And I think he's somebody that would appeal to the Celtic support for what he's done there. But as I say, it just depends whether they want to go down that road.
He's profile wise, what, 45? I think he's 45. So again, it's a good age.
Yep.
But you know, I'm also, by the way, just refusing to rule out Martin O'Neill. I just am, and I know, and I've heard him click into the old mode, and it's don't be silly, don't be looking at me, I'm just an old guy and all this. Don't think that. Don't believe it for a single second. There's still a glint behind the old trademark specs. There's a glint in the eye. And by the way, it might become a whole lot more than a glint. It might become a roaring flame on Sunday if he should go to Hampden, rekindle all the old magic, and lead Celtic to a semi-final victory over Rangers. Listen, he said it himself. He admitted it himself in his kind of inaugural press conference second time around the other day when he said, "Yeah, look, I do have an addiction for it.
I'm addicted.
I can't shake it."
Aye.
And that's just football in general, but I think Celtic in particular is, even more of an appeal and might feed the addiction even more. So everything that Martin O'Neill's saying right now, and I really enjoy listening to him, watching his interviews, talking to him. He's an entertaining guy, but everything he says I take with a major, major pinch of salt, especially when he's talking about this current opportunity, which even last night after the game, he says, well, if I'm here for the longer haul, or probably the shorter haul, obviously. And when he was picked up on that, he says, I didn't mean to say that. It's just come on, Martin. You're kidding nobody.
That was uncanny, Scott, wasn't it? It was like Martin O'Neill was in the room.
It was that.
It's not the strangest. I don't think it's that far-fetched that if he gets a couple of good results, maybe Celtic's desired candidate isn't available to the summer, that Martin O'Neill could stay on.
Well, I mean, and there's why I wonder if it's open-ended just now, and just as open-ended as it seems to be. Nobody seems to be able to put a realistic timeline on this, how long this is likely to ask, what target Celtic are moving towards. And again, that feeds a little bit towards Craig Bellamy, because he's got 2 games in November, after which he could be absolutely free.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll still be contracted to the Welsh FA, but he's not going to the World Cup. So are Celtic hedging their bets, waiting to see how these games go? What if Craig Bellamy says, well, look, guys, I've actually qualified as now for the playoffs. I couldn't possibly bail on my country now. I would need to at least see out these games. In which case, would Martin O'Neill be happy to hang around till March? Would Martin O'Neill be happy to hang around at the end of the season and wait for Craig Bellamy to come back from the World Cup? I don't know.
It's all up in the air.
I don't know, but there's a little bit of mischief in his eyes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've got plenty of comments coming in already. If you're watching at home and you want to get involved, please do so. Let me throw a few of these at you guys. Gianni, Europa Gianni, says Decanio would be ideal for the media. That would be good.
Gianni, where's Paolo Vanoli? Is he not getting the Celtic job?
He's getting his Ryanair flight over. John says Ange wouldn't work with the board anyway. Mark says, can't see Celtic paying compensation, giving him the money. I think he means McKenna. Sean says, if Bellamy gets a playoff spot, there's no way he's walking away from the Wales job. Gianni again actually says, Bruges in the Champions League, surely he'll be eyeing a bigger job, likewise the Bodo Glimt manager. And Davey says, personally, I'm slightly concerned that Celtic are actively seeking a manager at this moment in time. I want Martin to stay to the end of the season all day long. I think there was a lot of Celtic fans last night, Scott, that enjoyed that kind of trip down memory lane, a bit of nostalgia. O'Neill leaping on the line like it was 20 years ago.
I think you're right. Even when he came out with the tracksuit, I genuinely thought he would have wore the suit last night. No, 73-year-old. I thought he'd surely wear the suit. I couldn't believe it when I seen him coming out the tracksuit. No, I think they did enjoy it, and obviously they get a good result. So I agree with Jack. I don't think Celtic fans would be too, as long as the results are good. I don't think they'd be too against Martin O'Neill staying a bit longer until the right guy comes along. The other thing as well, not really mentioned, is where Sean Maloney kind of fits into this, because I mean, I'm not saying Sean Maloney should be the next Celtic manager, but I have heard recently, since he's been back into Celtic, he's somebody that the club really rate, and they want him to be part of the kind of future there. And I just wonder whether, if O'Neill does stay longer, he's almost kind of mentoring Maloney. If Maloney needs mentoring, I mean, listen, he's been a manager, obviously. He's been at Hibs and Wigan. He's been in the Belgian setup, so he's got a bit of experience. And maybe that doesn't qualify him for the Celtic manager's job. But if this was a wee bit more long term with Martin O'Neill, and it does go really well, could Maloney come into the thinking? And the other one that we've not mentioned is Robbie Keane, who's also in the betting, who again kind of fits that profile. He's got a link to the club, young up and coming coach. I think he's been in at places like Middlesbrough and that, and now he's obviously a manager in his own right, and by all accounts doing well at Ferencváros, who ironically play Rangers at the start of December in the Europa League. So I think, a bit like Jack was saying about Bellamy, I definitely don't think he would rule himself out either.
I think there's an issue, a potential issue between the sort of more militant element of the Celtic support and Robbie Keane. There seems to be, because I think he worked at Maccabi Tel Aviv, and I think he's, and I don't know how this happens. I haven't paid the slightest bit of attention to it, I have to be honest. But Robbie Keane, given what the player that he was, the legendary status that he was afforded, and which he earned, by the way, for the Republic of Ireland, the amount of grief that he's getting back in his homeland for some of the decisions that he's made career-wise.
Is that right?
And yeah, and I think there are Celtic fans that are more than aware of that background. And politically for the Celtic board, and I'm afraid they have to think about the politics of the thing, because they're coming right under the cosh just now from their own supporters. If they present somebody that would antagonise a support which is already pretty much on the brink and has been for some considerable time, you only need to see the numbers outside the front of the stadium last night. If they sort of didn't realise the potential backlash from something like that, they might be making a bit of a mistake, and might put a guy like Robbie Keane in an impossible situation from the start. As I said to you, I'm not familiar overly so with exactly what the issue is. I think it's got something to do with him working in Israel, and we know about the sort of pro-Palestinian element among the Celtic support, and issues that's caused with the likes of Lila Bada and stuff. So I just get your antenna goes up on that one a little bit, and you think that probably would be one that you'd want to avoid for totally non-football reasons. And I just, in normal circumstances, maybe a board just goes out and says, well, we'll appoint who we want, and maybe Celtic will do that because the board seem to do what they want when they want anyway. But I think that you could be bringing a problem to your doorstep there because of these political sort of debates that are raging around that particular issue right now.
Going back to what you were saying, Scott, Craigie is one of a couple of people in the comments talking about Maloney. Says Maloney will learn a lot to be the next manager if O'Neill signed an 18-month deal on Monday and took over after it. I've seen a lot of people saying that maybe Maloney's been groomed for a long term. I don't really know what it's based on. But...
listen, that's why he's been brought into Leonardstown, because they've heard good things. They believe in him. I think they see his potential and his growth potential as a coach. I wonder though. I think the Celtic fans, again with that one, would they just see him as a really easy appointment, a guy that was already in the building? I think if Celtic fans, I can see the total emotional wave of support which will build behind Martin O'Neill, especially if he goes to Hampden at the weekend. Given that how long has it been since Celtic actually beat Rangers? Barry Ferguson
It's well over a year,
1-1, drew 1. Yeah, there was that absolutely hopeless 0-0 thing.
Guess it was the cup final last December. Right?
Yeah. So, if Martin O'Neill comes in, magic does it, Celtic romp to a big win at Hampden, or just any sort of win at all, probably. And the momentum behind appointing Martin O'Neill, I think, will grow.
Yeah.
If it goes the other way, you'll find that there'll be let's make the change as quickly as possible, probably. But the sentimentality will remain. The Celtic fans, there's so much goodwill there. And at this moment in time, it is unusually clever by Celtic. I say that tongue in cheek because these guys have run that club really well. I know they're in the firing line just now, but over the years, in terms of financial, in terms of the trophies won, it's difficult to look at it as being anything much other than a success. I get where we are right now, okay? Yeah. But the idea of bringing in a guy like O'Neill at this particular moment in time when the club felt fractured and the fans were protesting against the board, I know it's not gone away, but if you needed a unifying character to front it up, then I'm not sure they could have picked any better than Martin O'Neill right now.
We've got a lot of comments coming in on this. Let me run through a few of these again, guys. Big Rab says a lot of us fans would like Martin as a director of football. Maloney would be okay if he's coached by Martin O'Neill. Sean says Keith is right. A friend of mine doesn't want Keane based entirely on the Israel link. Not sure how widespread it would be, but certainly a few. Parkhead Boy says Celtic always look in-house first. I hope not, but Maloney probably gets it perfect yes man for the current board. And Davey says Keith's bang on. The permanent protest section won't have Di or Keane. Di with the Lazio connection and Keane in Israel during the Gaza assault. And David O'Connor says forget Maloney, Bellamy and Keane. None of them are qualified. And just finally Gianni tells us that Di was on his way. He's getting a Wizz Air new route flight, Rome to Glasgow, $26.99. So it'll be good to see him arrive.
By the way, I'm happy about this new route as well, though. This is good. This opens up things.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad to hear that news.
Sorry, just fine as well. Badger in the comments points out the introduction last night was Sean Maloney and Martin O'Neill. Don't know if you can read anything into that, but there you go.
What introduction?
I don't know what he means. Does he mean in the stadium?
The stadium announcement.
It's a good point.
Must have been.
So plenty going on there.
I know, but you heard Martin as well. I mean, I'll probably be taking my instructions from
this
him,
young man.
From this young man. Come on, Martin.
Well, I've talked plenty about Celtic, but you were at the Rangers game last night, Scott. Craig Marshall says Rangers will put Martin O'Neill back in his rocking chair after we beat them. Not a problem. Rangers last night, huge win for them, Scott.
Big win psychologically, I think, Daniel. I mean, listening to the performance, the performance wasn't spectacular. Rangers are still a million miles from where they want to be, but I do think that was a huge win for them last night, because before the game, you're looking at Hibs' record at home, the players they've got, won their last two games, and then you seen the team sheet when it came out. Danny Rowe deciding to rotate his squad, and look, when you're sitting sixth in the league, you're a new manager at Rangers and the team's toiling. You wouldn't think it would be the time to start tinkering with your team and leaving the captain out and people
what was
like
it,
that.
5 changes, Scott? Half the outfield players.
Aye, five changes. Probably the biggest two were Gassama and Tavernier, and maybe Diomande as well. For the midfield, but you thought, God, if this goes wrong for them, then he's going to come under the cosh big time for making these changes. But credit to him. I thought they were excellent in the first half. I must admit, the best I've seen them in a while. This system, this tactical switch going to this kind of 3-4-2-1. Watching them last night, it does seem to suit a lot of these players. It's been pretty clever for Roll not to do it so quickly and to get a tune out of them so quickly. They look more compact, more difficult to play through, no giving up as many chances first clean sheet last night away from home in almost a year. I mean, December the 8th was Rangers' last clean sheet, which is just incredible. And I just think the manner of the, as I say, football-wise, it wasn't brilliant, but when you see the scenes after it, and Danny Rowe touched on this in his post-match press conference, just for the first time feeling that wee bit of connection was back between the fans and the players at the end. And I think it was about the manner of the win. No, it was about digging in, showing a bit of resilience, a bit of character, getting the clean sheet, getting the 3 points. I think on the back of the Kilmarnock win, and obviously ahead of the Celtic game at the weekend, I think that was crucial. And look, Danny Rowe saying you can see smiles on the players' faces again. I think it's the same with the supporters. I know there's a long way to go. It's only a start. It's only baby steps, 2 wins in the league. But it takes him up to third. I said to someone last night, when I think back to Russell Martin's last game away to Falkirk, I remember watching the away support that day. And honestly, apart from telling Russell Martin where to go after they'd scored, no, you barely heard them. And yet it was totally different last night. They're fully behind Danny Rowe at the moment. Obviously, that may change if results go awry. But no, there was certainly, you could sense there was a good feeling back amongst that group. And to get 2 wins in the spin ahead of the Hampden game, I think they'll get into that with loads of belief, especially, I know Celtic got a good result last night. And there's obviously that wee bounce for O'Neill coming in. But I think Danny Rowe looks and sounds quietly confident that he can go there and get a result and get Rangers to the final.
Did you hear Connor Barron's comments after the game last night as well?
Connor Barron that gets rolled out for every press conference, post-match, pre-match, during match.
He's saying we're massively confident of winning on Sunday.
Do you know what? What else you got to say?
We're terrified. I guess.
So, what I see last night, Scott, and I don't know if you agree. First half, I think you're right. I think that the system might even have caught Hibs a little bit by surprise. Rangers were able to flood numbers into specific areas of the pitch. They were able to press a lot higher up. They were moving. For me, one of the big change that you've seen in a very short space of time is they're more aggressive in possession. They're more aggressive out possession. They want to move the ball forward quicker. They're not interested so much in, although there was periods where they kept possession around the back and all this. But once they get into more advanced areas, they're looking to get forward. They're looking to break through and get in behind people. There wasn't much evidence. In fact, there wasn't really any evidence of that under the previous manager. So that's a big change, I think, and just the way that he's trying to get the team to play. When Hibs figured it out tactically and made a couple of tweaks, the second half was more of an even game, I felt. But what I saw, especially in the last 10, 15 minutes, Scott, when Hibs were having to try and throw the kitchen sink, and I know they got a penalty eventually that Jack Butland saved, but what I saw was Rangers getting back in numbers, but really organised numbers. Yeah. They were shutting down the space, as Scott said, getting compact. They were letting Hibs get into the wider areas and then dealing with the cross balls when they come in, and they never looked stretched. And I just thought the way that given that there's been a very short space of time to work in the training pitch, I found that quite impressive. And I think overall, the biggest thing, I think the takeaway for the Rangers supporters was they saw a group of players out there who were fighting for one another, who had each other's back. We talked last night, there was a couple of little flashpoints off the ball. There was Rangers players getting involved that I'm not sure that I've seen that for a long while, where one of their teammates is, having an argument with somebody. There was 3 or 4 Rangers players were over, right in their face, getting in between it. And at the end, they celebrated. And I thought it was a nice touch from Danny Rowe, because he was the guy that was singing his name, but he actually turned around like that and said, these guys. Yeah. And I think that's really a clever bit of, team building, spirit building, call it what you want. But it's essential because Rangers look like a broken team, a collection of individuals. And you're starting to see signs that they're more of a collective unit now, that they realise they're in the trenches, they're in it together, and they need to look after each other. That could be, for me, potentially the most significant thing that Danny Rowe the most significant difference he can make to what was going on there before. And I am seeing signs, but I do think I'll caveat all that by saying it's really really early days, and who knows what the reaction looks like if Rangers get a sole one at Hampden on Sunday afternoon.
Sorry to jump in, Scott, in front of you, but we've actually got a little clip from Danny Rose' press conference last night. So let's see what he had to say.
Danny, what can that result do for the belief in the players ahead of Sunday?
Yeah, you feel it general in the changing room at the moment. They understand as well that we need this spirit to win games. I think it was a big part for me when I'm arrived to give them exactly also the way. But of course you can speak as a manager on the pitch to the players. What I really like was at the end of the game, when you see now our supporters and the players come closer and they recognize what we are doing. I think this is a great spirit to feel this after 1 week. Maybe 1 week ago we were a little bit far away from each other, and now we come closer, and this is great to see.
Do you have a plan in your head for Sunday already?
No. Because I have to look now the game from tonight back, what I changed maybe, what is new, and then we have Friday and Saturday for preparing the next game.
Do you feel you're unlocking certain things in certain players that maybe they didn't have before early in the season?
Yeah, I think general I see some players that are growing at the moment. Yeah, you can also, of course, after the game it's always easy. If you lose the game, we will ask why you rotate so much. If you win, it's good, because then you see as well that you need more than just 11 players with such a schedule. And I think Max made a step forward. You see it. Also Nasser made a good game today. But I can speak about a lot of individual performances for me. It's really about the team at the moment, and this is what I see in the changing room. Before the game, it was lively. They spoke to each other, and after the game, of course, they sit together and they say, okay, it was a good effort what we put into.
Was Danilo injured at half time?
No, but yeah, of course, Danilo is not in this rhythm. Yeah, he has to play more and more. And it was then clear for me to have with Gus and Danilo two backups again on the pitch. I think this is job sharing at the moment. I spoke with them before the game, and this is what we need. Last time Danilo come from, we put on Mikey on. Today we start with Mikey. I think this is all in all what we should do as a group, because then everyone feels as well the connection to each other. This helps massively.
I know it's still early, but do you feel that you're building something now?
Hopefully, yeah, but let's speak later. This is not at the moment. We spoke about great momentum on Saturday and Sunday. We made the first step. Today, the next step. We won 2 games in a row, and this helps. But I think we spoke on Sunday about short memories in football. Now we have 2 wins. Let's continue. I think the next weekend is as well.
It's a double Scott appearance on the hotline.
Well, that was supposed to be a press conference. It turns out it was an exclusive 1-to-1.
Some great questions there, whoever was asking him. He spoke well though, Scott.
He does. He's impressed me, Daniel. I must admit, probably more than I expected. As I say, still very early days, but when we take the debut, the European game in Bergen, at the equation, it's been a decent start for him. And I agree with Jacko. I think the biggest encouragement of all of the kind of Danny Rowe start at Rangers has been you can see there's a buy-in there for players that just didn't feel as if it was there under Russell Martin. These players are in this system now. They look as if they know what the idea is. No, they know what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. They know where they're meant to be on the pitch. I think the players probably even sense that this shape suits them even as individual players more. And as Jacko says, at the end, when they're digging in and they're trying to make sure they get over the line and get that clean sheet, well, that must be really encouraging for the manager and for the supporters to see that. As I say, I think just in terms of the system, I agree with everything that Keith said there. And I think just simplifying it even more, what this system gives them is more players in each box, defending and attacking, which was lacking before. They were giving away far too many chances because they didn't have enough bodies back. And yet, when they did get forward into decent attacking areas, there was nobody in the box. I think this system allows them to do that. Getting two guys.
But he'll change it again, Scott.
It will.
He'll change it again. Now, I don't know. He might not change it again for the weekend. But he said that he is not a guy who's dictated to by, this is the way that I play the game, this is the way that I see the game being played. He changes it from game to game, from opponent to opponent. I think that he probably keeps something very similar for the Celtic game? Probably I do. But you don't know with Danny Rowe. And I think that's possibly a good thing in terms of, we've seen these managers with a very set in stone ideas about principles and how the game ought to be played. That's fine, but everybody knows then what they're going to come up against. I think there's an element. I think maybe Hibs, I don't know if they're expecting a 4 at the back last night, but it was the 3 or the 5 or whatever you want to describe it. I think that's not a bad thing to let the opposition try and work out what it is that they're going to come up against. And I think that it was only during the game at half-time that Hibs got more of a tactical feel for how best to combat it. The one thing I'll say though, Scott, right, and this is, so having said all this, right, and having said about, I can see more of a bond, more of a solidarity, a unity between the players, more of a willingness to work and fight and scratch for each other. And I find that impressive. And the reason that I find it impressive is I'm not sure, and you said it there that Danny Rowe talks well, and he doesn't light a fire in anybody's belly, does it? I mean, he doesn't look to me to be a real inspirational character. Quite a quietly spoken, kind of.
Aye, I know what you mean.
Not an imposing character. Or
he could be totally different in the
could be totally. But Scott, I mean, you've actually sat with him. And am I right? Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. He is quite quiet and quite kind of collected. But what that tells me in terms of getting 2 victories and looking at the last 2 performances, what that tells me is players must be really impressed with him tactically and what he's drumming into them. I mean, I remember speaking to Barry Bannon a few weeks ago. Just obviously, I can't remember if he'd already been appointed or it was just before it. But I remember him saying the very first meeting he had with the Sheffield Wednesday players, this young German coach who they'd never really heard of, never worked with before, and he said after that first meeting, players came out of that meeting, and he said, and he admitted, he says, when we went into the meeting, we're thinking, what's this going to be like? No, wait to hear what this guy says. That kind of cynicism. He says when they walked out of that room, they thought, "Oof, this guy knows his stuff. This guy's good." And the other thing he said was, when I put it to him that Rangers supporters might see it as just another Russell Martin type appointment, the first thing he said was, "No, he's different because he's far more adaptable." And that goes back to what you're saying about changing tactics, changing shape. Bannon said he won't just stick to. He's got principles, obviously, but he won't just stick to a rigid formation or a system, irrespective of the opponent or the occasion or the venue or whatever. He will look at the opposition, look at what he's got available in his own team, and devise a plan for that particular game. Now, he's come up with a system after watching one game in Bergen and a couple of training sessions. He's completely changed it and decided, no, this shape, this formation suits these players better. And I agree. I think he will stick with it on Sunday because I think the players are enjoying it. I think it's causing opposition problems, and he'll try and do the same to Celtic. But I agree with you, Jack. I think if it's not going well after half an hour at Hampden, he'll just switch it. He won't to go back to a back 4. He spoke about that last night, saying although it's a 3, because of the players they've got, the likes of Tavernier, Aarons, Magoma, it can easily go to a 4 if they need to. So I agree with you. He's pretty quiet. Is he inspirational in terms of you think a team talk, being loud and getting players up for it? It doesn't strike me as that type either. Maybe that's the role the couple of assistants that he's brought in. But what that tells me is these players have been really impressed early on with what he's doing tactically, the ideas that he's putting into them. Because, as you say, to get that bond back and that togetherness and that kind of synergy, to do that in less than 2 weeks, I think it's a decent
achievement. Good start.
Yeah.
It's a good start. I'm fascinated, Scott, because the early indicators from last night, from Martin O'Neill's first game back at Celtic, a lot more energy, a lot more intensity, a lot more direct. All the things that we've just talked about with the changes that Danny Rowell's trying to bring into Rangers, and it really sets up. I have no idea how that. And I did say to you last night I was going to try and think about it and come up, and I'll put my hands up. I do not have the foggiest idea how this game goes.
Well,
but I'm really interested, because for the things there and the things that I've just said to Scott about Danny Rowell, is this guy a big enough character for this environment? Is he going to thrive in this, or is he going to wilt in it? We know that Martin O'Neill's got to thrive in it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What's Danny Rowell going to be like when he's out there in the middle of the mayhem,
the eye of the storm
of an Old Firm semi-final 50-50 split at Hampden? That's going to give you, I think, a real good indicator as to whether or not this is going to work for him in the long term. And it's going to give us the exact same thing with Martin O'Neill. Is this something that you should have given up 20 years ago, or is he still right in the thick of it, and right up for the battle the way that he was before he left 20 years ago? So much to learn from this game.
You're totally right.
And by the way, Scott, what I would say is, see that last one, the one that 0-0, stick it in the bin, never watch a game of football if that's what you're getting again.
No chance.
What I do predict is
the
exact opposite of that.
Yeah. I think you're right about Rowell. It'll be about how he handles the whole thing on Sunday, because it will be a first for him. I mean, look, he's managed. We all know he's coached with Hansi Flick at Bayern Munich and winning Bundesligas and the Champions League 2000. He coached that World Cup as part of the Germany backroom team as well. So he's been in big environments before, not big pressure games. But as you say, when you're the man, you're standing that touchline at Hampden and maybe things are going against you, that's when we're really going to see how calm and collected he is in terms of his decision making with this team and the tactics. If, for instance, Rangers go behind in the game and Celtic are on top, what does he do to change it? How does he change the flow of the game? That's where obviously managers really earn their calm. I mean, and as you say, Martin O'Neill, I wrote a thing the day, we were laughing about it earlier, but when Martin O'Neill had his first Old Firm game as a manager, Danny Rowell was 11 years old at school. You know what I mean? So that's the difference. O'Neill's had so many of these games. His record was terrific, as we know, in the Old Firm. So it's not going to faze him one bit. For Danny Rowell, this is a whole new experience. But as I say, the signs are pretty good. I don't think much will faze him. He seems pretty calm and collected, pretty single-minded in terms of what he wants and how he's going to do it. So it's just an absolute fascinating contest on the pitch, but also off it with the two managers.
Well, look, the Rangers fans that get in touch certainly have a bit of confidence. But before I get to that, very quickly, Scott, Sean wants to know, does Tavernier start on Sunday, and if so, where?
I think he does. I think he'll start at right wing back. I think Giga was really good last night. I know he's been very up and down, a bit ropey at times this season, especially under the previous manager. But I thought Giga arguably did his best game last night on the right of the three. Made that brilliant challenge in the first half on Klidja when it looked as if he was clean through. I think it will be Tav at right wing back with the three centre backs that played last night and Magoma on the left. Obviously, we know Conor Barron. We now know Conor Barron's suspended, which is a shame because I thought he was excellent as well last night. So he'll come out. You would expect Diomande to go in as his direct replacement. It's either him or Rothwell. I think for that type of game, you go with Diomande in terms of his experience in the Old Firm, and you would want legs in there. The really interesting bit is ahead of that, because I think Danilo's probably played his way into the team with 2 goals in 2 games. I think he'll have one of those positions just off the striker. In terms of the central striker, it's obviously Shermiti or Majowski. And then that other position just off the striker, you've actually now got Gassama, Asgard and Mikey Moore all vying for that place, which is really interesting because we're saying about how the system suits a lot of players. The one guy it probably doesn't suit is JD Gassama, who's arguably been Rangers' best player up until this point this season. But it doesn't really suit him because he's an out-and-out winger, left winger. But you'd be reluctant to play him at wing back in a game like this because he's no great going back maybe. So that's where it'll be really interesting in terms of his team selection. But I expect Tavernier to come back in and no too many changes for last night.
My last little trip to the comments then. Rangers fans do seem confident. Haining says, really enjoyed that last night. Felt like the first game in ages I've been fully engaged. Brian says, I saw signs that Rangers might be able to salvage this season. Whether they can win anything this season, I don't know. Craigie says, if Jers losing Sunday, they only have themselves to blame. Celtic are there for the taking. And Rangers Easy OK says, the thing which impressed me most was Rose saying we play 3 at the back against Kelly and Hibs due to the amount of long balls we face. Clement Beale didn't recognise that. Roll has after 2 games.
Daniel, the interesting thing, I don't know what Jacko thinks of this, but I mean, just looking at the league table last night, and as I say, Rangers still a million miles from where they need to be. But do you know, it's incredible the start that Rangers have had, and they're still only 5 points behind Celtic in the table. I mean, I know Hearts.
See the table now.
I know Hearts are clear, but I was just thinking from Danny Rowe's perspective, and that's another thing I like about him. The last couple of press conferences, he's talked about the league table, whereas previous managers never wanted to mention the league table when it was going badly. He acknowledges and recognises that it's not been good enough, and Rangers need to start climbing and competing. And I just think, from his point of view, and this is no disrespect to Hearts whatsoever, I just think if Rangers focus on trying to catch Celtic in the league table, then they'll probably not be that far away come the end of the season if they can do that. And you're obviously then relying on Hearts dropping points. There's lots of people out there think Hearts are going to start falling at some point. I know we've sang Hearts praises obviously, and Derek McInnes on here, and they look a different proposition this year because of the players they've brought in and the squad they've got. But I think purely from Rangers' point of view, when you're looking at that table, concentrate on trying to catch Celtic 5 points ahead. I think if they do that and they can close that gap, they could somehow get themselves back into it, which seemed inconceivable a few weeks ago.
Before we wrap up then, guys, I mean, a lot of people asking for your predictions. Rebel says it won't be 6-2 to Celtic, Keith. That's actually 100-1 with the bookies, if anyone's interested.
Where did that suggestion come from, 6-2?
Rebel said it in the comment.
It won't be.
Aye, she says it won't be. I know. I don't think you suggested it would be 6-2, but there you go. Predictions then. I mean, Bob in the comments says the winner of the Motherwell St Mirren game will win the cup. Trust me. So,
well, do you know?
Would you this season?
The way this season's going, you just really wouldn't be shocked. I haven't moved. The dial hasn't moved for me since last night, so I'll probably not get a more of a feeling for it until you see the teams. I don't know. Sometimes you get a gut. Right now, what I said last night, I haven't moved from there. It could be 4-0 to Celtic. It could be 4-0 to Rangers. It could be 3 each, decided in penalties. It could be genuinely anything. We've got not enough to judge on. There's just not enough there to know how these two teams are going to match. So no, I just can't. I'd be lying if I said anything else. It could be anything.
I'm really disappointed, Scott. He's let us down, hasn't he? I know you'll give us a prediction.
I won't sit in the fence like Jacko, Daniel. I think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be a draw, and I think Rangers will win in penalties. There you go.
To be fair, Rebels written back in just meant obviously Martin O'Neill's first game last time round was 6-2.
Oh, right.
Which makes sense.
That's the references. Yeah.
A lot of people seem to be fancying a draw as well. Ewan says 2-2. And just for the record, I think this is definitely going the distance.
Well, let's put it this way, right? The the best I can say about that is that we and you have already been discussing what time we should get the show on air, and I think both of us have fairly concluded that there's a more than reasonable chance that we might have to go a little bit later than we would like to, because I think both of us have a mind of thinking there's a real big chance that this goes all the way, extra time, penalties, the whole caboodle.
Usually on Derby Games Cup finals, we go right after the game. The game kicks off at 2, so I think we're going to come on at 5 p.m. on Sunday.
That's the plan, but that might have to. It might have to be a bit of a movable feast.
I need to get both your guys' take as well on the other semi-final, which is a really tasty game. I don't know about you, Scott. I would make Motherwell slight favourites, but if it's anyone's game.
I think you're right. I mean, in its own way, that'll be fascinating as well, because it's kind of contrasting styles. Daniel, isn't it? No, Motherwell's come in under Askew with this kind of distinct style of play, playing out for the back, a lot of possession, pace up front. Against St Mirren, who we know are a lot more physical, a lot more pragmatic. So again, a kind of fascinating contest. I agree. I think probably Motherwell go into it as slight favourites, but no, I think I wouldn't really look St Mirren. No, I think I wouldn't really look Stevie Robinson. He'll have a game plan, no doubt, for how Motherwell are going to play. St Mirren have probably a bit more experience about them in terms of these kind of big games and in terms of the actual squad. So that'll be tight, really tight as well. It wouldn't surprise me if that goes all the way to extra time and pens as well.
Listen, if someone could give me a prediction, that would be great, guys.
I'll give you a prediction. I'll give you a prediction.
Go for it.
Prediction. What is it? The same boxing styles make fights, and Scott's absolutely spot on there. That's a complete contrast in the way they go about. And by the way, I'm not saying which one is better. I know Motherwell getting a lot of praise for the style of play, and rightly so, because I think it's an incredible job. I've got no problem with St Mirren's approach to playing football. I find it equally as exciting. It might not just be the same artistic finesse, but it's exciting. It's what fans like to see.
Really good team.
You saw that last night. That was incredible. Some of the dramatic events in the game against Hearts. And I think, and it's just a hunch, but my feeling in this, and maybe it's because we're closer to game day, my feeling on this one is that St Mirren have got the physical edge over Motherwell, and they're a bit more direct. And as impressed as I've been with Motherwell, I can't fail to be impressed with St Mirren and what they continue to achieve year on, year out under Stephen Robson. I think I'm going St Mirren 2-1.
Wow. And while we're on St Mirren, actually, friend of the show, Kyle Gunn, he's asked a couple of times about the third St Mirren goal was chopped off last night, just when you mentioned all the drama. It's a baffling decision. I can't help him. I don't know why it was chopped off either.
Well, we know what the explanation was, don't we? An offside block on Lon Shankland.
Bit ropey.
It was ridiculous.
Shocker. It's a shocker.
Absolutely.
It's a shocker. And with Des Rose.
Des Rose.
Des Roach, obviously a regular resident referee.
He'll be on Sunday.
Yeah, and he's made it clear that he's not exactly a fan of Matthew McDermott. And by the way, it's hard to argue with him. There is a back catalogue now of extremely dubious decision making that has Mr. McDermott's name written all over it. Not that Mr. McDermott. No relation, is he, Scott?
No, he's not, thankfully. That's the problem, Jack. On a serious note, I mean, no doubt in a couple of weeks we have the VAR review show. Willie Collum will come out and say, "No, totally wrong decision. We would advise him to do this." But how many times is this?
Yeah,
going to make decisions like that, and again,
and it's the same people. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they keep saying they're coaching them, and they keep making the same ludicrous mistakes. I mean, that hugely costly to St Mirren last night to go, potentially go 3-1 up. And yet it feels like it'll almost just get brushed under the carpet. It's not good enough, honestly, not good enough.
What's your thoughts on the other semi-final, Scott? Who do you see getting through?
I think it'll be tight, but I think Jacko's probably right.
He's already refused to answer the question.
Sorry, I'm getting really old. Sorry, I thought I hadn't asked you, Scott.
No, my gut feeling, I think it'll be tight. and it wouldn't surprise me if it goes all the way. But I must admit, like Jacko, I've just got a wee feeling St Mirren might just edge it. Just that wee bit more kind of, I don't know the word for it, guile or experience. Aye, I think they might just edge it.
A bit more streetwise.
Aye, I think so. That's the word I was looking for. So no, I think they might edge it. Aye, 2-1, 3-2, something like that.
There you go. Well, whatever happens, the weekend's Premier Sports Cup semi-finals will be here on Sunday to pour over it all. I'm sure it's going to be dramatic, to say the least. But for tonight, I think that brings to the end of the show. Thank you so much for all your comments again. We appreciate you getting involved. Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Daniel.
And Keith, it's always a pleasure as well.
Always a pleasure,
Always
especially
a pleasure.
when you're here in person. Maybe see you Sunday,
see
Scotty. How's your availability? Jumping on?
Well, I'll certainly bet the game, aye. Whether I'll have time to jump on, I don't know. But
okay, I'm just getting you to commit on.
I was going to say that's a binding contract if you say yes, Scott.
Me and Andy will be there. I'll commit and tell you Andy will definitely come on. Right,
well, we'll be back, as we say, at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.